Okay, welcome to Mini PC Tech, where we talk about all things Mini PC. This is Mike. I am going to unbox a CanaKit Raspberry Pi 5 Starter Kit Pro. Now, I have a project in mind for this. My homeowners association has solar lighting, and there is a package that I want to install to log and track the charging and discharging of the batteries and the lights to see if we can get it to work, to understand why it's failing. Do we need more batteries? Do we need more cells? Or is it just not hooked up right? So we're starting with the CanaKit. And the CanaKit is a Raspberry Pi 5. It is 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage, which might be a little overkill for it, but that's what we're going to do. So the first thing you need to know is this thing that says read me first. You really need to read this first. This is not a difficult thing to put together, but the video is something you really need to follow, because everything just fits together beautifully. You just need to know how that happens. So that's the first thing. And of course, CanaKit has a couple of cool things here I want to point out. Besides the help, there is also a GPIO pinout. For those of you that are not familiar with GPIO, it is the way that one can experiment with a Raspberry Pi to be able to hook all sorts of different things up to it and make this into just a fabulous digital processor for a very low price. So we've got that. And then they have two HDMI cables here. Here's one. Here's the second one. And it basically says, hey, this thing has dual HDMI outputs, which is pretty cool for something that if you bought the smaller level, you could probably buy for about 50 or 60 bucks. Going on, we have the 128 gigabyte chip, which we'll put in. This also has a chip reader, which tells me I can put even more storage on here. I haven't gotten really a clear answer on that, but I'm going to investigate it and add it to my blog and my videos here as we go. And of course, we have the heatsink. Now, what is a heatsink? I mean, that's kind of a silly question for some people, but the idea is that this has a fan in it, which is really important for something this small that's generating that much heat in such a small package. The heatsink sits right on top of the chips and radiates the heat away from them into the fan, which gives you even more cooling and keeps this thing really cool. Okay, so the next thing we have is well, before we do that, one more thing is the chip reader. Now, I have looked all over to figure out what the heck this is, and I think what happens is you put a chip in here, and then you can put it into one of the USB ports on the Raspberry Pi, and you can add even more storage to it. And it says here, let me read it, this card reader is to be used on your PC or Mac if you need to reload noobs again onto your memory card. Do not use this card reader on the Raspberry Pi, as the Pi can only boot from the onboard memory card slot. So I guess you can't use this, you have it for emergencies. Okay, but 128 gigabytes of storage on something this small makes it almost equivalent to a reasonable mini PC. Reasonable mini PCs are about 256 gig. There are some that are 128, and there are some sticks that are 128, and they work very well, depending on what you're doing with them. Should be enough for a lot of things. Okay, then we have the Raspberry Pi itself. And I'll go ahead and open this. I'm a little bit nervous, but I've seen so many people do this on camera and say, hey, in spite of all my training as an electronics engineer that says you never handle one of these things, I'm going to handle it. So let's see what the problem is here. A little bit hard to open. Let me take this off camera and see. There we go. Okay. I am literally unboxing this as we go. Okay. So we've got the board, and I'm going to handle it gently because of my training as an electronics engineer. I never handle stuff. And you see it's got an Ethernet connection. Whoops. 4 USB ports on this side, and your GPIO, which you saw the pinouts for. It allows you to do a whole bunch of stuff with it. And then on the other side, you have your micro HDMI ports here. And I'm not quite sure what this other thing is. Let me see if it'll tell me. Not quite sure. It's not labeled, but I assume it's some sort of maybe a micro USB port or something. That's probably what it is. And then you have your chips. And we're going to put a heat sink over this when we're done. And there's some instructions here, but I've been pretty much told, don't worry about the instructions, just follow the darn video. So we've got that. And then we've got the case. Now, all these things come together and allow you to build a computer. Computer needs a case, computer needs, you'll see the power supply in a second, needs cables and all that. But maybe you're not putting the Raspberry Pi in a case. Maybe you're embedding it, because, you know, people do that. They put it in the board, they'll embed it in another case, and that's fine. But this is a great way to start. I call this training wheels. You've got to start somewhere. And this is as good a place to start as any, where everything is here. And the fan, you can see the fan pattern there would go there. And then this thing here, you can see you've got your outputs for your HDMI, micro HDMI, and this one, it even says USB-C, and that's for power. Okay, that makes more sense to me. And then this side, you've got your Ethernet and your USB there. Okay, I'm mistaken. So the 4 USBs there, and the Ethernet there, and the micro HDMI, and the USB for power. And then this is going to come apart too, and the reason for that is we're going to put the, you'll see in the video, you're going to put the board in here, and then you're going to put it all together one piece at a time. And then finally, we have the power supply. And again, you know, maybe you don't need this. Maybe you've got power coming from another device. The Raspberry Pi is an embeddable device, and that means it can sit inside of another case.